The prairie evening was a vast canvas of fading light, the horizon painted with copper and ash as the sun surrendered to night. Silas McGraw rode slow across his land, a figure swallowed by distance, his horse's hooves beating a steady rhythm over dry earth. He was 30 years old but carried himself like a man older, each movement weighted by solitude. His ranch lay miles behind him, an empty cabin that echoed his quiet life. Neighbors had long called him strange, cursed even, a man destined to be alone. He had learned to endure the whisper of such judgments, yet the ache never left him. It clung like dust to his boots, like the silence in his chest. As the wind shifted, a sound brushed against his ears, so faint he thought at first it was the trick of air. A voice. Not the clear call of a bird nor the cry of a coyote, but a human whisper, fragile as glass. He halted his horse, listening. Again it came, broken but distinct. Please don't hurt me, I am already injured. Curiosity and caution pulled him forward. His lantern swung in the growing dark, and its circle of light caught the figure of a woman leaning against a tree. She could not have been more than 24, her frame trembling, her hand pressed against her side where blood had darkened the fabric of her dress. Her eyes, deep and fierce even through exhaustion, lifted to his with a plea sharpened by fear. She was Apache, and her presence here, alone and wounded, spoke of danger far beyond the wound she carried. Silas froze, the world narrowing to the space between them. He knew what it meant to involve himself. Neighbors already despised him, and the fragile line between settlers and Apache was drawn in blood. Yet as she clutched the bark, whispering again with voice frayed by pain, he felt something inside himself falter. Loneliness had carved a hollow in him, and her words seemed to fall into that space with a weight he could not ignore. He dismounted slowly, each step deliberate, his boots stirring dust. She flinched as he approached, her breath ragged, but she did not flee. Silas kept his voice low, uncertain, telling her he meant no harm. When his hand hovered near her shoulder, she trembled but did not pull away. He eased his arm beneath hers, lifting her gently. She was lighter than he expected, yet the burden of her presence pressed heavily against his chest. Back at the cabin, the fire hissed to life as he settled her near it, his own pulse louder than the crackle of flames. He cleaned her wound with water and cloth, clumsy but careful, each touch met with wary eyes. She winced but did not protest, her lips pressed tight against the pain. At last she whispered her name, Ahiona. It carried the sound of rivers and wind, a name shaped by earth itself. Silas repeated it under his breath, clumsy on his tongue, yet it rooted itself inside him as if it had always belonged there. Through halting words she revealed fragments of her story. A widow, her husband taken by illness. Her in-laws now pursued her, not out of grief but for claim over what was his. Her body, her life, her freedom. She had fled, wounded in the scramble, knowing that capture meant a prison without walls. Silas listened, his chest tightening with each syllable. He saw in her the reflection of his own exile. He from his neighbor's scorn, she from the chains of her own kin. Two outcasts circling the same fire. He offered her bread, a simple gesture, his hand unsteady as though the act itself was too intimate. She hesitated before taking it, her fingers brushing his for the briefest instant. That touch lingered, not with romance but with recognition, as if two storms had found a shared silence between them. She ate sparingly, her eyes still sharp with mistrust, but beneath it flickered something else, curiosity faint but alive. The night pressed against the cabin walls, coyotes howling at intervals, a chorus that seemed to remind him of the danger circling them. Silas sat in his chair, watching her from the corner of his eye, firelight painting her features in shifting gold. He felt the weight of choice pressing upon him. To help her was to risk not only judgment but violence. To turn her out was to betray something within himself he had not known was still alive. His chest rose and fell with the conflict, his palms slicked despite the cool night. Sleep claimed her in fits, her breath uneven, but she did not cry out. Silas remained awake longer, staring into the flames until their shapes blurred. He thought of his neighbors' faces, the sneers of Ezekiel Hart who had once declared him unfit even for friendship. He thought of the whispers in town, how they would sharpen if he was seen with her. Shame curled like smoke in his stomach. Yet every time his gaze drifted to Ahiona, curled by the fire, he felt a question stirring in him. Was dignity something given by others, or something taken by standing beside another soul? Morning crept in with pale light, painting the plains in silver and gold. Ahiona stirred, her eyes opening slowly, scanning the room with cautious clarity. Silas offered her water, and this time she accepted without hesitation. Outside, the world was already turning against them. Silas could feel it in the way the air shifted, in the quiet he had known too long. Soon, others would know she was here. Soon he would have to answer for it. Yet as he stood in the doorway watching the prairie stretch endless, he knew one thing already. She was no longer simply a stranger leaning against a tree. Her fate had intertwined with his, and in the marrow of his bones, he sensed that neither of their lives would remain untouched. He turned back to the cabin, to her waiting eyes, to the fire that still smoldered. For the first time in years, Silas felt not the hollow weight of loneliness, but the heavy, trembling presence of possibility. And that presence, fragile and dangerous, made his breath come sharp and unsteady, because he could not yet see whether it would save him, or ruin him.